What's up, everyone? How's it going? Just hopping on right now. Let me actually get my other microphone connected. Dylan, how's everyone doing today? I was trying to get I got my desktop set up again, and TikTok came out with like a streaming app for Windows. So I was gonna try to use like my camera, but looks like there's no dice there. So on the iPhone again. But let me get my better microphone here. Jonathan, how's it going? If you guys noticed, I upgraded from the Patagonia. Got the Arc'teryx now. Can't be looking like a scrub out there. It's a little warm though, so I think I got to get like the lighter version. Okay. So streaming from a phone is annoying, guys. There's like so many things you gotta. Let me see. Okay. Can I program? Not really. I tried to learn. That was actually one of my original thoughts was to become a developer, and then I didn't really like the. I don't know. I guess I just didn't really get too much into it. So I used to be a sales engineer at 2 other companies. So as a sales engineer, you kind of do some coding, but it's more so just kind of like understanding and being able to read it and being able to talk through problems with the customer. So that's kind of the extent of my coding experience. You're a great content creator. Thanks, man. Tips for standing on the AWS interview besides leadership principles? Let me see. Hold on. Okay. Plugged in the Ceramonic mic. Let me know if you guys don't hear that right now. Tips for standing out besides leadership principles? So one of the big tips would be don't use the same story for different leadership principles. Have like 2 stories for each one. That's probably a big one. Do you think I'll ever change from sales again? Probably not. I mean, I do want to start my own startup. So sales is really helpful for that, just because you get involved with all aspects of the business, and anytime you start a startup at the beginning, it's all founder sales. So I'll probably stay in sales until I start my own thing. What's the background about? So the background, this is from RepView. So RepView is they sponsor my Wednesday evening TikTok lives. They're like Glassdoor, but specifically for tech sales compensation data. So, Glassdoor, they show you reviews for companies, but it's company-wide reviews. They don't really tell you the reviews specifically for like the sales organizations, which can be very different. So, for example, here, so you can see ratings for different companies for their sales orgs, and they also break it down based on like the level. So for like SDRs, for inside sales reps, for enterprise reps, SMB reps. So this is for enterprise reps, top paying companies. You can see this here. So you can see it, they have it sorted. So most of these companies, they're about 145, 150K base, 50-50 split. So that's a 300K OTE on target earnings. This top rep reported earnings. All this data is coming from reps that are putting data into this website on their own. So these are the highest numbers that people have reported at these companies. And then what's also neat is you can like dig into these specific companies and you can see like percentage of reps that are hitting quota, reviews for the companies based on like product market fit, leadership, culture, and so on. So it's a great resource when you're trying to like comb through different job opportunities and figure out like which company is a better one to take if you're trying to consider an offer. So can you work in tech sales with just business management degree? Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, you don't even need like a specific degree. Does RepView work for Canada? Yeah, it does work for Canada, although the Canadian pay is a little bit lower than US pay, but it's fairly close nowadays. Dude, you're in the next pre-sales class because of me. That's awesome, man. Happy to hear that. So that's cool. So yeah, they're starting their next class in January. So all goes well, you should be a sales engineer in April. How did you practice sales in the beginning? Just lots of repetition. So you can practice by like recording yourself, recording pitches. You can practice pitching to your family and your friends. And it's just a lot of repetition. You can also look at like Toastmasters. These are public speaking groups. This is a great resource. They have chapters in most major cities. And I think they're starting to do it in person again right now. You know, due to COVID, things were virtual, but that's a great resource to check out as well. What kind of startup am I interested in starting in? I'm interested in cybersecurity. I used to work at a cybersecurity startup, so I want to do like something within analytics. What's better for booking meetings as an SDR, enterprise or commercial? I wouldn't say one's necessarily better. They're just two different types of companies. The selling motion is a little different. Although for an SDR, it's not really going to make too much of a difference if it's enterprise or commercial. The jacket is heat. Thanks, man. How competitive are the enterprise AE positions? They're fairly competitive. I mean, when you're interviewing for these positions, like typically they want people that have at least 5+ years of experience. So these are definitely not the entry-level roles. The entry-level roles are sales development representatives. These are roles that you can get with 0 experience in most cases, and then you work up to this level. So you start off as like a sales development representative, then you go to like inside sales, and then you would become an account executive. And then you start off at like small and medium business, and then like mid-market, and then enterprise. And then smaller companies might skip levels, but that's the general progression. How would you transition from customer success engineer to tech sales engineer? Best way for sure is to do an internal transfer. Internal transfer is going to have like the least amount of friction. It also gives you a lot more time to like transition to the role. So start networking with the sales engineering manager, indicate that you'd be interested in moving to that role. See if there's some sales engineers that you can shadow. See if there's some additional responsibilities that you can take on in addition to your current job, just so you can build some of those skills. And then also I try to identify what that internal transfer path is. So most big companies like Amazon, Google, internal transferring is fairly common, fairly regular, and they have specific processes on how you would do that. You've been an SDR for about 6 months now, looking at an SMB AE role next year. Best tips when applying. Yep, best tips would be to make sure you're recording all of your performance metrics that you're doing as an SDR. My best tip actually would be to try to get promoted to an AE at the company that you're at right now. It's a lot easier to get promoted from an SDR to an AE versus applying for AE roles as an SDR, although it does happen, especially right now in the market with the shortage with staffing, for example. But for best tips when applying, so try to make sure all of your metrics are sharp on your resume, on your LinkedIn. Try to quantify the impact as much as you can. For AE roles, they're going to be typically looking for closing experience. So try to shadow some deals, see if there's some deals that you can get more involved with, ones that you're sourcing for your AEs and you're passing on the opportunity. Try to stay involved with those, at least for a couple of them. So that way you can talk through that entire process from end to end. After 5 years of working in sales, where can you go after if you don't want to work in sales anymore? You can go in a lot of different places. You can go into product management, you can go into business development, you can go into marketing, you can go into engineering. I've seen people do all those different roles. What's next after account exec? So there's different tiers of account execs. Like I said, above enterprise, there's also like strategic and global accounts. That's actually like the level that I'm at. I only have like 2 accounts that I manage. And people will stay at that level as an individual contributor for 10, 15 years. Like they'll be working maybe the same, few number of accounts, and they just get very well versed in those accounts. And so you don't necessarily need to like go into management or change different roles. Like if that's what you enjoy, like you can get like fairly high within companies as an individual seller. Other than that, you can go into management, of course, and then of course those other roles that I mentioned earlier. Advice from pivoting from finance into sales, 2 years into career. Yeah, best advice is just hop in. So you're going to be looking for those sales development representative, business development representative positions. I have a couple of videos posted on like what you're specifically looking for on LinkedIn. That's where most of these jobs are posted. But yeah, with 2 years of experience, I would say those would be the types of positions that you're looking for. You're going to be in that position for 12 to 18 months, maybe up to 2 years, and then after that, you'd get promoted into an account executive. What do you think about where to go after the... Oh, oops. Sorry, guys. These questions will show up, and then they'll like freeze for a bit, and then I'll get like a whole bunch of them that pop up. So I'm gonna get to all of these. What do you think about where to go for promotion after for an SDR manager, AE, customer success? The most typical path from SDR is going to be going to an account executive. You can go to an SDR manager, but that kind of locks you into that inside sales management path. So if you do want to become like an enterprise field sales manager, it's typically recommended to become an enterprise seller, an individual seller first, and then go into management. So the general rule of thumb is the earlier you'll go into management, that kind of caps your management growth, or at least slows it down a little bit. Because at the higher levels of management, they do want some like real world experience in terms of closing these types of deals and accounts. How much do I make? So I'm at Amazon Web Services. My on-target earnings is over 300K. And then I have Amazon stock. And then this year was actually like a really good year. So probably be just over 500. 15 years in sales, but new to tech. How do I get started in tech sales? What companies target? So I have a playlist on TikTok, Get Into Tech Sales. So check it out. I have a bunch of like free resources posted on there in terms of like how to prepare your resume, what specific jobs you're looking for. And then since you have 15 years of experience, that's the path I would recommend. For people that are like, that don't have a ton of selling experience or don't have like college degrees, you could look at programs like Pre-Hired or Pre-Sales Academy. Those are great programs. Do I offer personal coaching and mentoring? So I respond to pretty much every message that I get through Instagram. So if you have specific questions, feel free to message me on Instagram. I'll get to it. I don't do specific one-on-one coaching for the most part. I have some slots that you can book in my bio, but my time is fairly limited. So if you do want like a really hands-on approach, that's when like a program like Pre-Hired or Pre-Sales Academy is great. Typically, I recommend that people try to get in themselves for 4 to 8 weeks. So use the resources, see if you can get some interviews, get some traction. If you don't get any traction after like 4 to 8 weeks, that's when it might be a good idea to look at one of these programs. And I like the programs because you do get a lot of one-on-one coaching and mentoring. And they also have placement guarantees where you actually don't have to pay anything for the program until you get placed in a job that pays at least $70,000 a year, which is pretty great because it removes a lot of the risk, or pretty much all of the risk on your end. Where to start coming from military with MBA. So coming in from the military with an MBA, I would look at like state and local government sales. So all these like big companies, they'll have specific sales teams selling into state and local and like federal accounts. So having like that military background, actually, I've seen a lot of, for example, when I worked at Google, a lot of people on the state and local team actually had a military background. So I would look at that. I would try to leverage that background and reach out to individuals at like the target companies that you want to work at and see if you can get a referral there, especially with the MBA too. Leverage that MBA network as well. Been in car sales for over 4 years. Would it be a smooth transition to tech sales? It's definitely like a little bit of a learning curve at first, but a lot of like the skills that you're learning within car sales in terms of like processes and work ethic and consistency and managing pipelines, I think that'll carry over. Account manager in a totally different segment. Can you pivot? Yes, you can definitely pivot. I've seen a lot of people do that. Final interview presentation for SaaS coming up next week. Any advice? Yeah, I had a video posted. I think I did 2 videos in terms of what to do within that final interview presentation. So 1, make sure you're working really closely with the recruiter. They should give you like a pretty in-depth outline in terms of what you should be covering within the presentation. But in general, you want to keep the presentation fairly short. You should start off with an intro slide introducing yourself, the company that you're representing, do a brief background of the company, brief background of the products that they offer, and then you should focus on the benefits that you're providing for the customer. So don't talk about features, talk about benefits. Make sure you include a slide where you're indicating what the next steps would be after the presentation. And then make sure you stop and pause for questions throughout the entire presentation too. You don't want to just go ahead and present for like 10, 15 minutes straight. You want to make sure you pause, ask for questions. And if you get a question where you don't know the answer, don't be afraid to say you don't know. It's actually a good sign, a green flag, if you actually say you don't know. But make sure if you say that you don't know, tell them that you'll follow up with the correct answer. And when you talk about the next steps at the end of the presentation, you can make sure you can circle back and say you'll get an answer for that question. Thoughts on Glassdoor reviews? Take them seriously or no? Yeah, Glassdoor reviews are usually, they're pretty accurate. So, but the thing is with Glassdoor, they don't have as many reviews on like the sales organization. So that's where like RepView, for example, comes in. Think Glassdoor, but specifically for tech sales positions. Have you ever heard of Boomi? Yep, I've heard of Boomi. Actually, I met with 2 of the reps at reInvent in Vegas a couple weeks ago. Best place for SDR. Our numbers behind you, AEs. Yeah, these are enterprise AEs. Best place for SDR would be like medium to large companies. So you want to look at companies that have like at least 50 individuals within the sales organization, because you want to get a lot of like coaching and mentoring and structured training when you're starting off. And if you look at like really small startups, you're not going to get kind of that training that you need, because you want to be building those fundamental skills early on. Difference between sales and product. I think the big difference between sales and products is probably the timelines in which they're working with. So sales is focused on closing business in the most recent quarters, for example. So in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters from now. Product is they're more on, they're developing new products, new software features, and some of these software features might not get released for a year or longer. And they're also not carrying a quota. So 2 very different roles. Usually product is within like the engineering organization too. Just started at a company as an AE. ACV is 22K. Is hitting your $1.5 million quota attainable? 1.5 million divided by 22,000. Let's see. So that's 68 deals that you need to close. So that's like like a deal and a half per week. Yeah, I would say that's fairly attainable. You got to make sure you start out. You got to figure out what the volume that you're going to need to hit that goal is. So 1.5 million, 22K ACV. That's 68 deals that you need to close. So you need to work backwards and figure out like what's your opportunity win rate, percentage of leads that turn into opportunities, and then activities that corresponds to those leads, so that way you can figure out what your daily activity figure is going to be. Sales at the end of the day is all a numbers game. So just work backwards from your goal. That 1.5 million quota should be fairly attainable. Client-facing account manager at Amazon, how to give client presentation, tips, resources. So I'm at Amazon too. So we actually have Wisdom, has like a ton of great resources on there. So I mean, in terms of like tips, there's a lot of different, things that we can talk about. There's general speaking skills, there's presentation skills. But one of my favorite resources actually is when you're presenting like on a specific like product. I like to look at how like the product owners are presenting it. So see if you could see if like there were any recent presentations at like any conferences or events that are recorded. And then you could see like specifically what are they highlighting on, what are they focusing on. In general, those would be good things for you to focus on within your presentation. When should you move companies to get paid more after associate AE? Great question. So it's always a tough question in terms of like when should you leave your company versus when should you stay at your company and try to get promoted. And there isn't like a simple answer to that. Really what it is you just got to evaluate what your promotion trajectory is within your company. You should have a general idea in terms of what your pay would be if you got promoted within your company. And then I typically recommend, even just making sure that your LinkedIn is constantly up to date. There's a little checkbox that you can check on LinkedIn where it says open to new opportunities or open to recruiters. And once you check that and you specify the types of positions you'd be interested in, recruiters will start reaching out to you. And at that point, you can go ahead and you can have some informal conversations with them, see what the opportunities look like, see what the pay would look like, and then you can compare that to your current role. But that's the general approach that I recommend. You should pretty much never quit your job before you take a new job. You lose all leverage when you do that, and it also forces you perhaps to be less picky than you normally would be. Like if you're already like in a good job right now and you're doing well, that's actually the best position to be in when you're looking for a new job. Does product or project management pay more? Usually product pays more. but it's also level dependent. So if you're like a low level product manager versus a high level project manager, usually the higher level will get paid more. Pros and cons of starting a career as a full-time SDR hire at a startup. Pro, you're going to get a lot of hands-on, usually time with the executive team within the startup. You're going to learn a lot. Major cons are going to be you're not going to have as many resources available to you from like a sales training, from a marketing perspective, from a product perspective. Career growth could be a little stunted as well. Like if you're not getting the right training and support. I've seen some startups where they don't actually cultivate their SDRs and they kind of churn through them versus promoting them up. But that'll vary a lot from startup to startup. So if you're looking to be like the first full-time SDR hire at a startup, you really need to understand and vibe well with the manager that you're going to be working with, and make sure that you can get the support that you need to grow within the company. Thoughts on project management roles at Fang? So at Fang, pretty much like any role is going to be fairly the same in terms of pay. It's all based on level. So for example, at Google, sales reps and any other positions get paid about the same as long as you're at the same internal level within the company. So if you enjoy project management, Fang is a great place to do that at. How do you build rapport? It's a lot harder to do that virtually. It's easier to build rapport like in person. Like you take your customers out to like dinner or lunch, grab coffee, grab drinks. But virtually, what I like to do is spend like the first 5 minutes or so making small talk with the customers. Ask them about like their family, ask them about the weather. There's kind of some basic types of questions that you can build. But the key thing is to build rapport is you want to take notes of those like little conversations that you have. So like for example, like one of my customers, she's really big into boating, for example. So early on, I noted that she's really interested in boating. So anytime I would have a call with her, I would start off and ask her about her boat or like the last trip that she went on. So it helps to kind of like find some type of like anchor conversations that you can use that has a personal connection to your customer. What do you think about the payment space? High Note, Marqeta, Stripe. Very promising. I think the valuations are starting to come down a little bit right now, but still a ton of growth within that space. So Stripe, for example, is one of the hotly anticipated IPOs coming up. So are there sales tech positions where you can find with the bachelor's in administrative tech, business administration from Columbia? Yep. Yes, you can do that. Nervous for your first day as a BDR? Yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking. I remember I was super nervous, doing my first like cold calling and everything. It gets easier though, trust me. It gets easier. Everyone goes through it. Everyone's nervous. Everyone's learning. So just make sure you ask a lot of questions, and then put in the effort, and you'll do great. What would you need to see in me in order for you to issue a referral? So send me a message on Instagram, on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is in my bio. Happy to exchange a few messages, and then I usually give referrals for most individuals that ask for them. So especially any of my followers. Is there sales in Spanish-speaking countries? Yep. Yeah. So a lot of like the tech companies will have territories in Latin America, but the reps are still based in the U.S. and they'll actually look for reps that are bilingual. So that's a very powerful skill set to have, being bilingual. It's very in demand right now. Say you don't want to work in tech sales field anymore. After 10 years, what careers can you go to? Lots of different careers. So one thing that people don't realize within tech, there's a lot of roles other than just software engineering or sales. There's a lot of like business development positions, marketing, and so on. And it's fairly common for people to move from job ladder to job ladder at these larger companies. So after 10 years, there's kind of like almost a limitless amount of opportunities that you can go into. Arcteryx, yep, I know. I just picked this guy up. Does RepView have sales engineering data? No, they don't have it right now, but it's supposed to be coming fairly soon, from what I was told. I gotta go through these questions faster. Let's see. Nice jacket. Thanks, man. Any advice for entry level account managers? Yes, make sure you find some like senior level account managers, network with them, learn as much as you can from them, ask a lot of questions. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. So if there's like specific scripts or templates that work really well or processes that work very well, because like, it's going to be different from company to company and segment to segment, try to go ahead and utilize as much as you can. Why are you running a social media account? How much do you monetize from them? I do it mostly for fun. Don't really expect this to really go anywhere. How much do I monetize from them? So I get paid for sponsored posts. It's not a ton of money. It's maybe like it's like 5% of what I make from like my day job, for example. So it's pretty much just for fun right now, and then I get write-offs associated with it. So sales engineer making 100K, but you haven't got promoted. Should you leave? Maybe. I mean, when do you expect to get promoted? It definitely also doesn't hurt to, update your LinkedIn, check that box, showing recruiters that you're interested in hearing about new opportunities. There's a lot of hiring right now for sales engineers, so I wouldn't be surprised if you got several recruiters reaching out to you like next week, for example, or this week, offering positions that are paying like 150K plus. Familiar with Ripple? Yep, I am familiar with Ripple. I make a little more than 200K at plan in life sales. Is that not much? I mean, it's definitely a lot, but at like the enterprise sales level, for example, and software sales, typical OTE on target earnings at plan is like 300K, and then it goes up from there. So it's all relative. But if you're doing well in life sales, then nothing wrong with that. You recommend jumping from network engineer to tech sales? I would say going from network engineer to like sales engineer would be probably a good transition. It's no longer Fang, it's Mama. Yep, yeah, they're changing all the things, and it's a matter of time before they're going to throw Tesla in there too. Started looking for sales jobs after finding you and found biz dev roles for private equity. Nice, yeah. Yeah, they have biz dev for private equity, and they'll have like sales development for most industries. Transition to a tech role and never ran demos before. Best advice for running good demos? Yeah, best advice is for running demos, try to tailor your demos to your customer. So if you're demoing to an e-commerce customer versus healthcare life sciences, they're going to be interested in like two very different things. So try to tailor the demo as much as you can. Make sure you have like real like sample data that actually makes sense within there. And then also focus on selling to benefits and not features. Like don't just go ahead and click through all the menus, for example. That's a pretty boring demo. Start off with like real life scenarios that the customer would be going through, and then kind of walk them through their day in the life of using the software to solve the problems that they were using. Is there a way to do tech sales part-time? Not really. They're pretty much all full-time positions. Why is Sitecore paying so much? I'm not sure. I'm not sure on there. Darktrace. I've heard good things. Darktrace. Next up and coming software companies. Yeah, HashiCorp is solid. Palo Alto Networks solid too. Palo Alto Networks is doing a ton of investing within cloud. HashiCorp is planning to go IPO if they haven't already. I know it's like fairly soon, so those are great ones. Databricks, another solid one too. Do you need a college degree? No. You don't need a college degree. You're cold calling doctors and selling patient management software. Can you work at Google, Amazon with this? Yep, yeah, you can definitely apply for those entry-level positions, although Google doesn't have too many entry-level sales positions anymore. Amazon does. They think they call them, depending on the segment, there's like associate account executives, so you can apply there. Is 200K OTE as a commercial AE to software company low? No, that's pretty standard for commercial, and then that's at enterprise level where you get higher. How did you overcome fear on the phones? Cold calling, just a lot of practice, a lot of repetition. I used to hate public speaking. I would get like very nervous and everything, but it's just repetition. I left Google. Yep, I left Google for like AI ML fintech startup, and I was there for just about a year, and then got laid off because of COVID, along with half of the company, We were in the middle of our fundraise round, so it was unfortunate timing. And then, but they gave me a really good severance, and then from there, went to Amazon Web Services. So did you stay as an SDR, or am I wasting your time? Highest SDR OT I've seen. So the highest SDR OT I've seen is 105K. But you should definitely be aiming to get promoted from an SDR to an AE for sure. If there's no clear path to promotion, then I would say you can try to apply for AE positions or apply for SDR positions at the companies that you want to be an AE at. Client-facing account manager. Oh, I think I touched on that one. 500K beast year. Yep, a very beast year. How much stock do you get for your vesting schedule? So they gave me like 70, I think it was like 75 shares. And then they do a back vested schedule or back weighted schedule. So you get like 5% year 1, 15% year 2, 40% year 2, and year 3. How do you become like me? Where do you start? You start off as a sales development representative, business development representative. Look at my Get Into Tech Sales playlist on my TikTok profile. It's at the top. How's the Amazon office in Chicago? It's pretty solid, although it's fairly empty. No one really goes in. I've only gone in like 3 times since I started like a year and a half ago. You think 9 months is a good ETA for promotion? 9 months is fairly aggressive, although you can do it. When I was an SDR, I got promoted at 10 months, so it could definitely happen. Most typically, it's going to be 12 to 18 months. What's the starting salary range for SDR? Starting salary range is anywhere from 60K OTE to like 105K OTE. That's the highest that I've seen lately. Great questions, everyone. Hopefully I got them all. If I didn't get your question or if I skipped it, make sure you just answer it again or ask it again. Why do I keep ignoring my question? Sorry, I'm not trying to ignore anyone's questions. They just have TikTok comments are like really weird because like they'll give you a bunch of questions at once and then it takes like a minute to refresh sometimes and you see a bunch of them. So if I didn't answer yours, just ask it again and I'll get to it. Am I remote? Yes, I'm fairly remote right now. What industry do you recommend for beginners? Cloud is really good right now. There's just a lot of demand within the cloud space. So you can work at the big cloud companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft. And then they have a very extensive partner network as well. So you can look at, for example, like the Amazon Partner Network. And there's hundreds, I think maybe thousands of partners right now. And all of these partners are hiring individual reps as well. Let's see. Does being bilingual help? Yes. Been in New Relic for 7 years now. Work your way up to commercial AE. You're at 200K OTE. Would you move? It depends how comfortable you are and what your path to promotion looks like at New Relic. One of my good friends that I used to work with at Google, he came from New Relic. I think he was there for like 3 years. Jack Lawson. He spoke, he had good things to say about New Relic. So I think he took a little bit of a pay cut going to Google, but he's still there right now. Ended up working out for him. How long to become an enterprise AE? So fast track to enterprise AE. So you'll be an SDR, let's say, for 12 months. So this is assuming best case performance and promotion cycles and everything. 12 months as an SDR, sales development representative. Another 12 months as an inside sales representative. And then 1 to 2 years as an SMB account executive, and then you might have to do mid-market, another 1 to 2 years, and then you'll be at enterprise. So that'd be like 4 to 6 years probably for enterprise AE starting from scratch. What's a good time frame for running demos? Yours typically take 30 minutes. I think a good time frame, 30 minutes is pretty good. It kind of depends on like how in depth you want to get with the demonstration. So when I used to do demos as a sales engineer, when I would do like the full demo, it would be like 30 to 40 minutes. Then you leave a lot of time for questions. You would book like an hour for that demo there. So 30 minutes is pretty good if you're booking an hour for the entire call. If it's like a 30-minute call, I like to leave 10 minutes or so for questions because you're going to inevitably get questions from clients during the demonstration. Would 5 years of retail sales experience selling mattresses be a joke if you apply? No, definitely not. I mean, people get into the entry-level positions with no experience at all. At the last startup that I was at, one of the best reps that I worked with, he actually ran a food truck for like 6 or 7 years, his own food truck, and then he went into software sales after that. So I wouldn't be too discouraged. How does AWS pay compare to the other ones? It's pretty much similar. Not sure why AWS isn't on this one when I took this screenshot, but they're basically right at this section for the enterprise level, so they're all about the same. What are the top 3 positions in my investment portfolio? Top 3 right now are probably Google, Amazon, and Tesla. Those would be the top 3 positions. Also have a good amount of Apple, and then a bunch of other tech companies. I'm mostly focused on tech companies within my stock portfolios. What's an entry-level tech sales position called? How can you find these jobs on LinkedIn? It's called a sales development representative or business development representative. I actually have a video somewhere on my profile. It's like maybe 30 videos down where it shows you specifically what to search for on LinkedIn. Next up-and-coming tech company we work for, HashiCorp. HashiCorp is solid. Zscaler, I'm not sure about Zscaler. Any in the AI outside of GCP, AWS. So if you want to find like the real up-and-coming startups to work for, best advice would be target Series A and Series B startups that are funded by Tier 1 VC firms like Sequoia and Excel. So you can just search on Google Tier 1 VCs. You can see which companies they're funding in like Series A and Series B. And those will give you like the most amount of upside in terms of like potential down the road. And then also it limits the amount of risk that you have, since these bigger these Tier 1 VCs will do a lot of due diligence when they decide which companies they want to invest in. Advice to transition from an AE role to SE role, wanting something less focused on commission. So I did that. I've done that. I've been an AE and an SE, and I've switched back and forth twice actually at this point. So advice, ways to transition. So internal transfer is going to be your easiest way for sure. Second thing is try to get like relevant certifications. So if you're at a cloud company, for example, you'd want to get like the cloud practitioner certification or the solutions architect certification for sure. If you're interested in cybersecurity, CISSP or any of the networking certifications are great. And then work closely with the sales engineering manager. See if there's any side projects that you can take on to show technical competency. You might need to learn coding if it's more of a coding heavy product that you're selling. Freecodecamp.org is great for that. How would you go about learning general industry knowledge, tech sales? There's just a ton on YouTube. So I'm a big fan of like looking at like entry level certifications. So tech sales is very broad, so pick like a specific industry that you're interested in and then focus on that. So it could be cloud, it could be cybersecurity. So if it was cloud, look at like the AWS Cloud Practitioner certification. It's a very high level certification. It's built for business level individuals, and it gives you a very good overview of cloud in general, how it works, how it's used within companies, what are the benefits, what are the different aspects of it. And then there's a ton of like free training basically designed to help you pass that certification. It's a pretty easy one to get. Freecodecamp.org has like a 4-hour free course posted on YouTube where it teaches you all the concepts that you need for that certification. If you're interested in like cybersecurity, look at like those entry-level certifications there. Look at the training programs for that. Cybrary has some free great training resources. So that's kind of like in general, that's where you would go. If you want to learn about tech in general, like I like newsletters. You can look at like TechCrunch, Hacker News. There's a bunch of other like blogs as well. I like the newsletter ones because I just get them in my inbox every morning and I just read up on it and keep up to date with what's going on in the industry. What's the dumbest purchase I've ever made? Great question. There's been a lot of them. It's hard to narrow down the single dumbest one, but probably maybe most recently the dumbest one was buying or holding on to like Roblox calls on Robinhood. Probably dumped like 10 grand on that. But in general, I think I'm usually pretty like, luckily the type of stuff that I buy has like resale value. So if I'm kind of like irresponsible and I buy like $15,000 motorcycle or $30,000 kit car, that money is still there. It's just like tied up. So fortunately, I haven't been in too many positions where like I really regretted a position because my money was just lost at that point. How long should you stay as an SDR before transitioning to AE? 12 to 18 months. That's usually typically how long it takes to get transitioned to an AE role. But you should be working with your manager to let them know that you do want to get promoted to an account executive, and then so that way you're on their radar for a promotion. The last thing you want to do is just kind of want to be, you don't want to just be sitting around waiting for that promotion. You basically need to advocate for yourself, tell them, show them that you're ready to get promoted, and that way when you get to that 12 to 18 month mark, it's like a no-brainer for you to get pushed into that new role. Would someone with a felony be able to pursue this industry asking for a friend? I think so. You know, it's not not every company does background checks, so you should be able to get into maybe like the smaller companies. But the bigger companies will do background checks. It depends on what the felony is. I know on the applications that I've done, they ask you if you have like a felony, and they ask for like specific details on there, and it might be just depending on the company policy whether or not they would hire you or not. Would tech sales be a good move if you have experience working with AWS and Azure? Yep. Yeah. If you have experience working with AWS and Azure firsthand, sales engineer or like a solutions architect would be a great position for you to go into. What are my hobbies outside of work? Quite a bit. I'm into like cars, motorcycles, learning piano. I like to ski, snowboard, biking. Got back into running again. I'm actually doing a 5K on Friday. I used to do gaming, but not too much anymore, and then doing more and more lifting now. Can we hire you for private guidance on moving to the industry? Yep. Yeah, it's linked in my bio. Feel free to message me on Instagram too. Would a tech hardware sales job doing cold calls help getting into one of these companies? Yep. I used to work at National Instruments, actually. That's where I started off in the technical support side. Then I moved into sales development and then inside sales. And then I went from there to a cybersecurity startup. So that experience, even though it wasn't within the software space, I was in the hardware test and measurement industry. It still translated over and helped me get hired. Things I would do differently in my career if I could go back. Probably the biggest thing that I would do if I could go back, like way back, would be I wish I would have just studied computer science in my undergrad. It would have just made things a lot easier, but it's worked out in the end. Other than that, there isn't too much I would have changed. Maybe the other thing I would have changed is I probably should have stayed at Google instead of going to this other startup. So I left Google, went to a fintech startup. It was very promising. Turned out to be a dumpster fire. They kicked out the CEO shortly after. We had bad timing with COVID. That's maybe the only real career change I would have done differently. But it's hard to make those decisions because at the time, it looked like a good position. They were paying me like $100K more. Very promising growth, hot area, but you can't do too much. Thoughts on startups that were in Y Combinator 19? I haven't looked at them too closely, but if you message me, I'll take a look at them if you're looking at applying to any of them. No experience in sales, but a ton in renewable tech. Is there any certifications that you can help with this move? Yeah, Salesforce has like a SDR certification someone told me about, so you can definitely look at getting that one. What exactly is my current role? My current role is strategic and global account manager. I'm at Amazon Web Services. I manage 2 accounts within the automotive segment. AWS also calls SDRs, BDRs, DGR, demand generation rep. Yeah, so companies will change these titles quite a bit. So they have, at Amazon it's demand generation reps, but they also have associate account executives or associate account representatives, and it'll vary. So even within Amazon themselves, they'll have different titles for SDRs, multiple titles. So what do you recommend to a new inside salesperson to be successful in their career? Just build your network almost immediately. So work with, try to spend time with like the senior folks within the company. Start mapping out like your career growth, your career trajectory isn't necessarily going to be linear. Not everyone's going to go from inside sales to field sales manager, for example. You could go in a variety of different directions depending on what you're interested in and what you do well in. But either way, it's really good to network with people outside the sales organization because those are individuals that you can potentially use to help within deals that you're working on. But more importantly, they can provide you some guidance in terms of like your career trajectory. Summer internships. Yeah, summer internships are important. They do tech sales summer internships. Have I heard of Dun & Bradstreet? Yep, I have. I worked with them actually pretty closely at the cybersecurity startup that I was at. We had like a risk analytics platform, and one of them was like third-party vendor risk assessments, and we commonly pulled in Dun & Bradstreet data. What's the difference between AE and inside-outside sales rep? So account executive is an inside-outside sales rep. Titles will change quite a bit. So within AE or account executive, they have inside sales and outside sales, and sometimes they're under AE. Sometimes inside sales is more junior than outside sales. But in general, when you see like an inside sales position, what it means is you're not going to be really traveling out to customers very often, if at all. Mostly going to be home-based or office-based. Outside sales would be working on bigger deals, working with larger customers, and you'd be covering a territory, and you're usually remote, working from home, and then you're traveling out to that territory every once in a while. You've been in sales for 9 years. Good base to transfer SDR. Yes, definitely. Do you know anyone that switched from engineer to tech sales? Yeah, know quite a few engineers, software engineers that switch specifically to sales engineering. That's usually the path that they go to. Let's see. Arcteryx, yeah. Been looking at getting this, just to know where to start. Send me a message on Instagram. Happy to help. Also look at my playlist, get into tech sales. Do you cover pricing at the end of the demo, or do you cover it on another call? I really don't like to talk about pricing until all the way at the end. Just because if you start talking about pricing too soon, then you get into like discounting discussions, and that's really not a place you want to be in. You want to basically fully qualify out the deal and the opportunity before you even get to pricing. And then at that point, because you really need to understand their use case very well and their specific situation and their scenario before you can even get into pricing. But if they do ask about pricing, occasionally they will. You can speak to it at a high level, but just don't go into a lot of detail or put numbers down on paper or anything at that point. Advice on where to pivot if the client speaks too technically and over your head in the cloud space. Yes, so this definitely can happen. So best advice would be make it very clear up front. Like if the topic and the conversation is getting too technical for you to provide any more value, you could just be honest and upfront and say like, be happy to bring on like a sales engineer or a product specialist in a future meeting. But for this meeting, I was really hoping we would stick to ABC or XYZ or whatever the agenda is. So a good way to kind of control for that is set a clear agenda for the meeting, and then if things start to get off track, acknowledge where the conversation is going, jot it down as the next step, and reassure the customer that you'll get back to that topic, and then try to backtrack to the original agenda if you're not able to speak at a technical level. What are your thoughts regarding no-low-code data science platforms? I think there's a lot of promise there. Companies have more and more data. They're just getting more and more data every single year. And there's definitely a shortage of data scientists and individuals that can utilize that data. So these like no-low-code data science platforms are great because they allow business-level folks to generate actionable insights from that data. So I think we're going to see a lot more growth within those within that space. 2 years in tech consulting, where would it make sense to jump into tech sales? So you can move, SDR. You can move into like a specialist role, product specialist role. Depends on what type of tech consulting you were doing. But I've seen consultants go into like these like specialist or sales specialist roles where they're not like a full account executive, but they're focused on like a specific product set, and then they're kind of like a second layer sales level within the sales team. AE experience, but non-tech sales finance. Where would you expect to start in tech sales? So pretty much anyone is going to start off at like the entry level, the sales development representative, business development representative. You just have to like kind of earn your chops, put the work in, build those like fundamental skills, and then you move up from there. So unless you have like very strong connections to customers that you would be selling to at the same company, which I've seen this happen. Like, for example, at like the fintech startup that I was at, we hired a senior executive from a bank because he had a lot of like banking connections, and those were our main customers. So he had like 20 years of experience, and he was brought on as a senior seller specifically because he had that experience. So he didn't start off at the entry level, but pretty much in order to not start off at the entry level, you need to have like very deep industry knowledge or connections that you can leverage. But not to say it's a bad thing. I think it's great to start off at the ground level. It's going to make you a very strong seller down the road. Thoughts on Rapid7? Rapid7, they're a leading cybersecurity company, great platform. Interviewed there actually in the past. Had a great experience there, so good one to work for. Is it hard moving from a startup to a big company? For some people, it is. Actually, I see the difficulty for, usually more people have more difficulty going from a big company to a startup, but going from a startup to a big company can be difficult because you might not be used to all the processes and the red tape that's involved with getting deals approved, for example. When you're at a startup, it's typically a lot easier to do pricing negotiations internally. It's easier to talk to the product folks, to the engineering folks, come up with creative solutions, get them approved, and get the deal done. At a bigger company, there's going to be a lot of processes in place for each of those things. Like, for example, at Amazon, it's kind of annoying dealing with contracting and legal just because they have so much volume. They have to have these processes in place to keep things consistent. So I wouldn't say it's very hard. It's just it does take time understanding the internal organizational structure and just getting used to that. Where would you say is affordable to live or move to with an SDR salary? Most places I feel like would be fairly affordable or able to move to with SDR salary. So they're going to be paying between 60 to 100K. A lot of people, when they first start off, they do like a roommate type situation, which is perfectly fine. So you'd be able to live in most places, I would imagine, on close to 6 figures. Would 5 years of retail sales experience selling mattresses getting an interview? Yeah, it would get you an interview, especially if you, because it's all people skills, selling skills. So the soft skills are very important within tech sales. There's a lot more to it than the soft skills, but they are important. So I think it would help you get an interview for sure. Please share your story, your journey, how you got started in tech sales, biggest failure. Sure, yeah. So I studied biomedical engineering as my undergrad. I had lifelong plans to become an anesthesiologist, go to medical school. And then senior year of college, after I did all my MCATs, did my applications, my interviews, I decided I didn't want to do another 6, 8+ years of medical school residency, and I just kind of like lost the passion for the medical field. So I decided to go ahead and work in tech. So I started off in technical support at National Instruments, doing hardware test and measurement. Was doing okay. Was getting paid I think 70K or 67K. Actually, no, I think it was 62K in Austin, Texas. So this was 2014. Knew I wanted to make more money, so I was kind of like Googling around, seeing what were the highest paying careers. Originally thought about doing software engineering, but decided I didn't really have like the patience to be in front of a computer all that long. That's when I came across software sales, tech sales, and I did an internal transfer to an SDR position within that same company. Did very well, got promoted within 10 months, went to inside sales, but knew I wanted to get into software because that's where all the big bucks are made. So I went to a cybersecurity startup, got promoted to a manager position there, left to go to Google, did cloud sales at Google, left there to go to a fintech startup. We had COVID layoffs, and then I joined Amazon Web Services, so that's where I'm at there. So I kind of went from, at the two startups I was a sales engineer, so I flip-flopped kind of between sales, like account executive, and sales engineer. So kind of a wide variety of backgrounds that I had there. But feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn's in my bio too. You heard sales at AWS is very cutthroat. Is that true? How many reps are hitting quota? In my experience, it's not very cutthroat, but it could be different. I'm within strategic and globals accounts, so I'm not sure how it is on SMB, for example, or enterprise, but it's actually very collaborative. And I found people actually to be more friendly here than they were at Google, which I heard that AWS was very cutthroat, but I think it's more so on the engineering side and more so on the entry level engineering side. The sales side is fairly friendly in my experience, and I think it's like 70% of reps are hitting quota. Thoughts on AE role in fintech payment startups? Yeah, those are great places to be in right now. If I could go back in time, how would I change my path in my career? What would I do different? Biggest thing I would have done differently is I probably would have actually left National Instruments sooner and gone into software space as soon as I can, or sooner. Or I probably would have just started off in the software space first versus starting off in hardware. Do I sell SageMaker, or is that a separate team at AWS? So I do sell SageMaker. The way that it works at AWS is you cover all the products on AWS, and then you have specialists that you can bring in as an overlay that can help. There are like SageMaker specialists that I could bring in, but it is a part of my quota, or overall quota. Just applied to SDR roles this past week in the Bay Area. Good luck. Yeah, a lot of hiring right now, so great time to be applying. R Portolio, you've been an SDR for 9 months? What is it here? Let me see. Or 9 years. Good base to transfer? Yes. Do customer success managers have similar OT to execs? So usually what it is the base salary is the same, and then instead of getting a commission, you have like a 30% bonus or whatever on your base, or 20% of your base. So OTE will typically be lower. Pricing on separate call, not on a demo for me. Yep, absolutely. Have I ever got any good equity positions from a sales role? Engineering and product get too much? Yeah, when I was at Google, actually, I joined at like fairly low level at Google, level 3, and they gave me 160 shares of Google stock, so pretty good. Engineering and product does get a little bit more, but it's offset because they get smaller bonuses versus higher commission on the sales side. How would you describe customer success manager role? So customer success manager role, the way I would describe it is they're on the post-sales side of the tech sales process. So there's kind of like a clear dividing line with pre-sales and post-sales, and that dividing line is when the contract is signed and when the customer becomes a paying customer. So before that, you've got sales development representatives, business development representatives. They're finding the business, creating opportunities, passing them off to the account executives. They're the ones that are running the deal all the way up until it gets signed. You have sales engineers that are helping out on the technical aspect of the sales process. And then after that, you have customer success managers, which are responsible for onboarding the customer and making sure that they're actually utilizing the product how it should be, that they're getting the value out of it, and making sure that they're happy customers. So two very different day-to-days, but very important roles for sure. In medical sales, successful would be easy to move over. Will be the starting position. So it won't be like super easy to move over, but you definitely can. I would recommend utilizing or like targeting like medical startups. So there's a ton of startups within like medicine, for example, right now. So anything that you can use to leverage from like your prior background in the new role is going to be super helpful, and it'll allow you to kind of bypass having to start at the entry-level position. So if there's a medical software startup that's has some overlap with what you were doing before, then you should be able to get into like an account executive type position. How do you transition from x86 enterprise hardware enterprise AE to cloud sales engineer? So the transition to cloud sales engineer, you would definitely want to get the cloud certifications. So the AWS professional architect or the GCP architect certification, those will give you the credibility that you need to land those sales engineering interviews. And once you actually have that certification, you update your LinkedIn, you're going to start getting recruiters reaching out to you fairly quickly for those types of positions. Engineer or tech sales pays more. At the very high levels, engineers will get paid more just because they'll have more equity and stock. But at the earlier levels, actually, a lot of the companies, they'll actually pay tech sales more just because it's more cash-based versus equity. You're an account manager. You're the most overpaid people in life. Maybe, yeah. There is, but you have to think about it. There is like a lot of money that we're responsible for the company, for like their revenue. So I guess it's worth it to the company to pay that much. Where do you think is livable on SDR salary? I think I touched on that one. Yeah, some of these questions repeat, guys. Sorry. What certifications do you say? Yeah, AWS Professional Architect, and then Google Cloud Platform Architect certifications, Solutions Architect. Those are good certifications to have. Possible from SDR to customer success? Yes. What certifications help the most to be an AE at AWS? I would say the Cloud Practitioner. That's like the entry-level certification. That one would help a lot, especially because they actually require you to get that certification within like 6 months. How products and software solutions are used end to end, which is great. So on the support side, for example, you're working on very specific issues and tickets that you're working on, but you don't actually get to see like the business level impact that the software is driving. So for me, that's what I like about sales. You get to sell software that has that can drive actually very large impacts on these companies, and it's also very financially rewarding too. You get to directly see the impact of your work. It's very easy to quantify the impact of your work as opposed to other positions. At what level is AWS remote work viable? How viable is pure remote overall? So right now, pretty much everything's remote. At any level, I would say remote work is viable. It's more viable at the higher levels, but right now, actually, the policy is it's team dependent. Most teams are sticking to a mostly remote structure right now. So, but you'd want to work with your manager, or different managers will have different policies. Our policy is basically you just need to be able to get to an office within like a day's notice or 2 days notice for like a meeting or a workshop or something. But other than that, you can work remotely. Any thoughts on biomedical engineering? I didn't. It's a great degree, I think, if you want to go into medical school, or if you want to work within the biomedical industry, like doing prosthetics. But know that if you want to do that, you more than likely need to go get your master's or PhD in order to get hired for those types of companies. How do you sell something to prospects that know more? Great question. So I've ran into this quite a bit. I'd often be talking to people that have been in the industry for 15 plus years. So the way that you sell to prospects that know more about the subject matter than you is you want to bring something new to them. So even though they might be in that industry for a very long time, there's a lot of things that they don't know. So the challenger selling methodology is a great one if you haven't looked into it. Essentially, you need to challenge the positions that the customer has. So they might be kind of doing the same process and framework that they've been using for the last 5 years. Maybe they're not up to date with all the newest trends within the industry. So bring them something new and educate them. That's going to be a way to sell them. Do SDRs cold call all day? Not necessarily. They'll do emailing and LinkedIn messages too. Do you see how the water beads off? Yeah, it just beads off nicely. Actually, this one doesn't have the Gore-Tex. It's just a down installation, but it's very warm actually. It's a little too warm right now. Do you recommend boot camp? Yeah, pre-hire, pre-sales academy. Those are 2 boot camps I recommend. They're in my bio. At what level can you go remote at AWS? Pretty much any level. Great question. Do I honestly enjoy my job? What hardships would you tell your past self to prepare you for? Lots. So I mean, I overall enjoy it. I think compared to a lot of other jobs out there, I feel like I can't complain. What hardships would I tell myself, past self, to prepare for? I think it would just be getting prepared for just like promotion hurdles, I would say. A lot of times, especially for like internal positions that you're gunning for, it might feel like you're a shoo-in for it, and then something happens where you don't get the promotion for one reason or another. And it can be very easy to get discouraged and feel let down when that happens. I would say the biggest advice that I would give myself looking back is think of your career as a marathon and not a sprint. So if it takes like another 6 months to get promoted, or even like a year, in the long run, it really doesn't make that big of a difference. So think for long term. Also, don't be discouraged if your career is a little bit of a zigzag versus like a straight line up. These are great questions, everyone. So I actually need to wrap up because it's 10:12 here in Chicago. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to message me on Instagram. Respond to pretty much most DMs, pretty much all DMs. It might take me like a week to get back to you, just because I have a backlog, but I will get back to your question, I promise. This session was sponsored by RepView. So RepView, it's like Glassdoor, but for tech sales compensation data. They sponsored this live. They're great. They have reviews for pretty much all of the major tech companies, so you can see percentage of reps that are hitting their quota, what the average pay is for different levels within the organization. Great resource. I'm going to be posting a recorded version of this live on my YouTube. That's linked in the bio. And again, I mentioned if you want to get information in terms of how to get into tech sales, look at my Get Into Tech Sales playlist on my TikTok profile, or send me a message on Instagram. And then there's also links to Pre-Hired Pre-Sales Academy. These are two great programs that I recommend. They don't charge anything up front. They're like 8 to 12 weeks, and they'll get you into either an AE position, or SDR position that gets you on track for an AE, or a sales engineer position. But thanks, everyone. Have a great night.